The following is a special presentation of iRacing on LSRTV, your home for sim racing. Live tonight from the Richmond Raceway, LSRTV, happy to be with you to say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to our continuing coverage of the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series powered by English Auto LLC, where tonight on the iRacing eSports Network, the round of 16 continues as we head to the Richmond Raceway. So happy that you're joining us as always on a Monday evening. Myself, Evan Pasoko, Brian Macklin up in the booth calling the shots with you this evening, and our producer Brett Wheeler downstairs twisted and tweaking the dials and bringing us to you this evening. And Brian, we finally got the playoffs kicked off that just a week ago from Las Vegas, so it continues into the tricky short track from Richmond for the second race of three.
Well, let me tell you something. The intensity that we saw last week on the mile-and-a-half out in Las Vegas was absolutely incredible. And now we're going to a short track where these guys can actually race as aggressive as they were trying to race last week on that big mile-and-a-half speedway. So I imagine tonight could get really interesting, and these guys are going to be very aggressive with each other. Of course, I was looking at it. It looks like our 12 moving on to the next round are pretty much set in stone. There's 4 drivers that have not made an appearance yet in the playoffs that are also not here tonight. That will not be able to advance to the next round. So I think we have our round of 12 already set unless something crazy happens. So these drivers now are just going to be going for wins, trying to do everything they can to give themselves some momentum going into the next round.
You can see what the playoff grid looks like. Andrew Freenar's with that race win, locks himself in, so he's going to be safe to go. But you can see those large points margins. That's because, as you mentioned, there were 5 drivers who weren't able to make the start at Vegas. I do know that Lionel Callisto, who would have won a tiebreaker, that's why he's shown in the red as opposed to in those bottom 4 elimination spots. He would have advanced anyways, but he is here tonight. There's still a chance that somebody like a Gabe Wood and a Nick Silver are able to make starts. So, you know, Lionel Callisto can't simply just start this single race and take off. In fact, even if any of those other drivers, a Falkenham through a Vincent, if they don't make a couple of starts here, and those other drivers come in and maybe start the next race out from Charlotte, which is going to close out this round, nothing is guaranteed. But certainly the round of 16, Brian, that margin for error a lot smaller than when we get to 12 and then to 8. But maybe that'll take a little bit of the pressure off here at a short track, knowing that most of these drivers are pretty much safe if you were with us last week.
Yeah, I mean, it does take a little bit of the pressure off, but you still want to go out there and be as competitive as possible and try to build that momentum going into the round of 12, because you just know how important that's going to be. And you just want to make sure that you make a statement to your competitors. Look, hey, I'm here to win races. I'm here to compete for the championship. And you've got to do it throughout the entire playoffs. You can't just do it for a couple of races and hope that that's going to be enough to get to Homestead. You've got to be able to put together a full playoff run starting last week at Las Vegas all the way to Homestead. So these drivers definitely are going to be up on the wheel here tonight, trying to do everything they can to establish themselves as the guys that can get up there and challenge somebody like Andrew Freenars or Dylan Jones, who have dominated this season so far.
A little bit of a late start this evening, but the cars are headed trackside. Let's go down and take a look. This is your LSRTV starting grid tonight from Richmond. So pole position going to go to David Washington. The 20.538 was actually tied with Brandon Bowie for the best time, and that tiebreaker goes to Dave Washington. That means that one was determined down to the 1/10,000th of a second bracket. So Bowie's going to end up starting alongside in second. Back on row 2, a couple of heavy hitters. Andrew Farinars rolling off in third. He's already safe and locked in. Spencer Preet starts P4. And David Comstock been picking it up recently. He'll roll from P5.
How about Michael Cozy Jr. starting from that 6th position here tonight? Then we have Eric Stanford starting 7th. Michael Gorilia, he was so fast last week at Las Vegas, but came up just a little short due to an incident. He starts in the 8th position here tonight. Ross Cato is back tonight. He starts P9. And Jason Jacoby, who was also extremely fast last week, had some issues on pit road. He starts from 10th. He's looking to rebound from that last week.
And just behind him, you've got the likes Daniel Falkenham, who saw a lot of speed. He's going to be in the number 11 machine. Kyle Kamer will start 12. James Ross going to get the unlucky number 13 starting spot. Final car to take a time to queue outside of row 7, rolling off for 14th. That's going to be the 48 of Tom Morano. And then Dylan Jones looking for some redemption. He'll be the first car without a time to queue. That puts him back in P15.
And just to mention, Dylan Jones did win last year in this race. He led 104 laps en route to that victory, so look for him to be competitive here tonight. Lionel Kalisto starts 16th. He's back after a couple of weeks being gone. He'll start from that 16th spot. Dwayne Vincent starts 17th. Then we have Daniel Eberhardt in 18th. Brock Drury is 19th. Brian Chambliss rounds out your 20-car field here tonight. And Evan, it's going to be a lot of fun. 180 laps around this little short track. Expect these guys to be beating and banging all night long, which could result in a handful of cautions before it's all said and done.
It's certainly going to be an exciting one. There was a chance that we were going to go heat racing tonight. Drivers then voted that they wanted it to be a normal race. I think Richmond in and of itself brings its own good number of unique challenges, so certainly those drivers are still going to have to weather the storm this evening as the lights do go out on top of the pace car. We talk a little bit more about this Richmond Raceway Pride. Obviously, we're racing under the lights tonight, which is kind of what makes it so fun to get a little bit extra grit, but America's premier short track clocks in 3/4 of a mile in length, only 14 degrees in the corners, not a lot of banking for a short track, so you got to get really hard on the brakes when you get into the corners, and something tells me we might see a couple of incidents at those points over the course of this race.
Well, you mentioned that you would expect there to be more grip being that's under the lights, but I was watching these guys in practice, and they seem like they don't have as much grip as they would like, especially on corner exit. When they try to throttle up, it seems like the back end of the car really steps out on them, so that could be a very big issue here tonight. Look for these guys to be extremely cautious in the first couple of laps until they know exactly what their car is going to do. These
cars get to head down to the safety of the pit lane this time by. So happy you're spending a Monday night with us at LSRTV and the iRacing eSports Network. Green flag in the air. We're off and away from Richmond. Race 2 of the playoffs in the full throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series. In the battle for the race lead, going to head down to turn 1. Brandon Bowie holds strong on the outside in the 43 car. He's not going to be able to make it stick on exit. So Washington to the race lead, and Andrew Farinar's up the inside. He wants to fight now, dead side by side for P2.
It's been a long time since David Washington's been out front on a Monday night, but he is there right now. He leads his first lap in quite a while here, and now he's trying to get ahead of these guys as you've got the battle for second raging on. Andrew Freenars on the bottom. You got Brandon Bowie on the top, just trying to hang on at this point. Looks like Freenars is going to inch ahead, and Bowie is going to slide in front of that number 37 of Spencer Preet, so he'll fall back to the 3rd position, and now they get single file through the front handful of cars. Looks like you got to go all the way back to, I believe, Jason Jacoby, who's racing for position right now. He was just making a pass on Kyle Kamer, and now you look right ahead of him. You got Daniel Falkingham and Ross Cato going at it for position.
That's going to be the next closest fight on the racetrack, and looks like Cato's going to be able to, in that number 12 machine, stay in front for the time being. It is an exchange for 8th and 9th position on the racetrack. Even further back, somebody like a Daniel Eberhardt continuing to try to move up to the field. He's able to get around Kyle Kamer, so that pass does get completed. Dylan Jones going to follow him through as well. There was actually quite a number of really fast cars, Dwayne Vincent as well in that conversation, who did not decide to take a time to qualify, so this opening session going to be critical for them, I think, to get a good amount of green flag laps, that I should say, so they can make up a couple of those spots. Maybe they want to get to the top 10 or so, then I'm sure they'd take a yellow, group everybody back up and restart, but certainly look for those guys mid-pack to do a lot of work early on.
Well, and Daniel Eberhardt's already done a ton of work in just the first 6 laps. He started in the 18th position, and he just completed a pass on Jason Jacoby to get himself into the top 10. So it only took him 5.5 laps to make that march up through the field to pass 8 cars. So that's pretty impressive for that 90 car. And he's got Dylan Jones following him right up through here right now. He started in the 15th position. Didn't get off to as quick of a start as we saw the 90 car, but he's right there behind him right now. And you can see right now Daniel Eberhardt is getting ready to try to make a move on Ross Cato. It looked like he was going to look low down in turn 1. Didn't quite have the run that he was looking for now as he tries to set him up on corner exit of turn 2. It's a pretty solid run. He looks to the inside, not quite close enough to make it happen, but Cato looks like he's going to give him the line, and Eberhardt will get to the inside of him side by side for that 9th and 10th position right now.
And we've seen some cars struggle on the inside of the racetrack. You talk about grip, just not being able to get back into the gas off the corner. So I thought maybe Cato could put up a fight there on the outside. Not going to happen. Eberhardt takes the position away. And now the 11 Dylan Jones will be the next car up on the inside again. pretty much been following each other through the racetrack for the entire course of the way that this race has gone so far. And another car taken down by that tandem as Eberhardt takes 9th, Jones takes 10th. And that drops Ross Cada back a couple of spots. P11, the lowest he's been all night long. And here's all 21 cars at the grid start this race. So far, so good from Richmond. As a battle for the race lead may be inbound. Dave Washington's gap on top of Andrew Frenars. Brian, you mentioned a bit wild, and it's good to see that number 98 machine back up front at a full throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series race. Question is, how long is he going to remain up front? Because Frenars is on him. Important thing to remember, not only did that number 88 machine, of course, get the win a week ago at Las Vegas to punch into the round of 12, but he's on a little bit of a streak right now as we go on board with the number 88 machine. Andrew Frenars has won the last 3 races in a row. Darlington, Indianapolis, and Las Vegas. Only thing it needs in that mix, Brian, the short track is doing good so far.
Well, and you can go back as far as Pocono, which is only about 5 weeks ago. He won that race as well, so he's won 4 out of the last 5. Definitely been on a hot streak, and you can see just how fast that 88 car is every single week, and it's incredible just how strong he's able to be at all these different styles of racetracks. I mean, like you just mentioned, he won at Darlington, which is a track that's completely different from anything you ever run. Then he went and won at Indianapolis, which is also a very unique track. Then he goes and wins at Las Vegas, which is a 1.5 mile cookie cutter track. And now he's running extremely fast here on the short track at Richmond. So it's just really impressive to see how strong he's been. But that's something that comes with a lot of practice. You talk to Andrew Frenars, you talk to any of these guys from the Aegis PowerTech group, they are always practicing, logging laps, trying to figure out what they can do to get just a little bit quicker and see what they can do to stay ahead of everybody else. And that's why you see these guys being so dominant. That's also why you see Dylan Jones, how he went through his spell earlier in the season when he won 4 in a row over the summer stretch. I believe he won every race during the month of July, if I remember correctly. And those guys are just so dominant because of the amount of laps that they put each and every single week before the race starts.
And certainly with the little bit of a delayed start this evening, it's not like drivers were sitting around for those extra 15 or 20 minutes. Those drivers were on track all the way up until the end, getting just that little bit extra that they feel like going to give them an upper hand. And we certainly heard those thoughts echoed, Brian, when we chatted with the top finishers last week in Vegas. Obviously with Frenars getting the race win, the rest of the top 3 were saying, listen, it's incredible how consistently fast the 88 is. There's certainly drivers who go to, a certain racetrack and they're really good. That's kind of their thing, or they go to a certain style of racetrack. Some drivers really good on the short track. Some drivers really good on, say, the fast 2 miles, like a Fontana or a Michigan. But it's really great to see how Frenars is able to do that at so many different racetracks, and he's not the only one. It could be 4 and 5. Spencer Preet, Michael Cozy Jr., they've been doing very good in these last couple of weeks. Something like a Brandon Booth, Comstock's been picking it up, Grillia, Eberhard, and it's a point that we hit on every single week. I don't think it's too early to hit on it now when you're talking about an average strength of field of over 4,000 iRating. These drivers know what they're doing, and that's why I think we see such a high concentration of talent that when you see separation between 1st and 7th, it's not a ton. All those cars very fast.
And these guys are all so competitive with one another. They want to prove that they are better than each other, and that's what makes it so difficult to pick somebody that can actually jump up here and challenge a guy like Andrew Frenars, who's been so dominant. Because all of these guys back here, Spencer Preet, Michael Cozy, David Comstock, Michael Grillia, all those drivers are people that contend for the victory every single week. They're up here in a really good position, but then you look just a little bit further ahead, and it's like you've got that 88 car who just continues to just disappear out into the distance every single week. So it's difficult for these drivers, but they know they've got to continue to work hard every single week to try to get there. And they continue to get closer and closer. I've noticed over the last month or so, Evan, that these drivers are getting a little bit quicker. They're getting more competitive with that 88. They're not making it as easy for Andrew Frenars to get out there and dominate these races as it was earlier in the season. There was a point in time where you knew he was going to start on the pole, lead the most laps, and win the race. Now that's not so much the case because he has to work for it. And he hasn't necessarily been the dominant car in each of these last 3 races either. He's just been in the right place at the right time for a few of them.
And sometimes it's all you're looking for. The 37 of Spencer Preet way sideways from 4th position. It is going to do a very good job of hanging on to that one. Michael Cozy Jr. Got a great view of that one. Sure, everybody tuning in with the live on board at the 77 machine appreciated that view. And I'm sure those two chat with each other about it. It is going to end up giving Cozy the position. So at the line, the 77 makes the pass. The Spencer Prick's not going to give this one up. I think his main concern here is not losing 2 positions. Cozy stays high. He'll be trailed by David Comstock, and the 37 try to make the inside work. Doesn't look like it's going to happen, though. Comstock gets it at the line. He'll look to clear this time at 1 and 2.
Still side by side with that 37 Spencer Prick on the outside line and trying to make that line work. Comstock gets a pretty decent shot off the corner. He's able to actually clear the 37 to move up into that position to hold on to 5th spot. And now you can see these drivers are beginning to move up the racetrack just a little bit. I just noticed that down there in 3 and 4, you see a couple of them guys, they actually ran the middle groove through the corner and then drove it down off the corner, coming off the corner. You can see Comstock, you can also see Michael Cozy Jr. running that middle groove in 1 and 2 as well. So this track is beginning to go through a little bit of a transition. You see these guys starting to move around looking for grip. This is where when the tires start wearing out, you don't have the speed that you want on the bottom of the racetrack. You might be able to get a little bit better drive up off the corner if you enter high and then get that straight shot off the corner. You're going to see it right here with the 42. He runs high, then looks for a straight shot off the corner. That's going to give him a pretty good launch down this backstretch. You can see the amount of ground that he's able to gain on the 77 car. Now he runs very high down in 3 and 4, looking for the same thing coming off this corner as well.
And for those who are familiar, maybe tuned in with us weekly on Monday nights and are familiar with the iRacing service, of course, you know that with it, the dynamic track model works right now. The rubber's going to get put down onto the racetrack. It's going to heat up, and that's going to change the amount of grip you have and where that preferred groove is over the course of tonight's 135 miles that stand between the green flag that came out 26 laps ago and the checkered flag that is still a long ways away. But something else that we mentioned all season, Brian, and we don't really expect it to change that much in the playoffs. Battle for 12th right now. Dwayne Vincent, Jason Jacoby. There's going to be contact. Dwayne Vincent sideways, and he is going to spin all the way around. Caution flag is out for the first time tonight, and Lionel Kalisto making his playoff debut. He got a piece of that one on the back straightaway. You take a look at the replay.
You can see on the replay right there what happened, and it was just an unfortunate set of circumstances, especially for Lionel Kalisto. Just wrong place, wrong time, had nowhere to go when all that began to happen in front of him. And that was just side-by-side racing between the 13 and the 20. And you can almost argue that the 20 slid up, but really Dwayne didn't give him a whole bunch of room either. So that's just one of those things, 2 guys racing really hard for position and not really wanting to give any room. And unfortunately, here at a short track, at some point you're going to run out of room, and it's going to cause an issue like that. But this is where you were talking about, like with Lionel Kalisto. He came back. We haven't seen the other 4 drivers in this round of 16 show up, but now that he's had some pretty major issues, if one of them was to show up next week when we head to Charlotte, they could potentially still get enough points to try to challenge him for that last spot into the round of 12. So he cannot afford to have this type of an issue just because nobody else is here. But we're about to have our first round of pit stops here as we see David Washington making his way to pit road. He brings everybody with him, and I imagine we're going to see 4 tires and fuel for everybody here.
We come back live. You see the race off for the pit lane. Dave Washington, nice and easy, get it out first. Andrew Freinar second off the pit road, followed by Comstock, Cozy, and Preet. One driver I'm looking for who lost a ton of time in that exchange was Brandon Bowie, who unfortunately for him gets in a position where he really struggled pit road entry. Took about 3-4 different adjustments to actually get properly into the box. By the time he started getting his right side tires serviced, everybody else was already getting the left side of the race car serviced, so that's going to cost him a ton of time.
Indeed it did, and unfortunately that's just going to be how it works. But David Washington, the first guy off of pit road with ease. Andrew Freinar comes out second. Then how about David Comstock with a really solid run off pit road? He comes out in third, and you got all these guys running, looking really good now. And I expected everybody to take 4 tires. We had a long enough run right there where it's just it's hard to take a chance on 2 tires at this stage of the race. It's one thing if you have a 10-lap run, but to have almost 30 laps on your set of tires, you've got to do it. You've got to take 4. But you got to continue to just march your way through the field. And how about Daniel Eberhardt? He was looking so good, but now it looks like he's at the back of the field again. So unfortunate for him. He's going to have to do that march up through the field all over again if he wants to have any chance to get back up to the top 5.
So everybody groups back up. Lights on top of the pace car. We'll get set for a restart. Somebody else who we didn't quite catch the issue with, Brock Drury, had to drop out of this race. The number 26 machine. A beautiful Epilepsy Foundation paint scheme on his Ford Fusion this evening. He came down to the pit lane early at lap number 12 and then did not return to the racetrack. So it looks like his night is going to have to end early. Not involved in an incident or anything. It's not going to have any sort of championship implication because he's not one of the 16 playoff drivers. So it'll just simply reduce the field down to 19. Although I'm not sure what Lionel Kalisto is going to have. But he was the third, fourth car into that mix. Brian, I think it's safe to say he got the worst of it.
He really did, because he just had nowhere to go. It was on the exit of the corner. It's kind of a blind spot for the drivers coming off of turn 2 right there, because you're trying to get up off the corner. You can't really see what's happening on the front stretch, and by the time you can see it, unless you got a spotter that's able to let you know what's going on, you're going to run right into it and not really have anywhere to go. And it's hard to get these cars slowed down, even though you're not really going that fast around this racetrack. At that point, he's only doing about 110 miles an hour, but that's still pretty fast. It may not be as fast as at 1.5 miles. But when you're trying to get a car slowed down from 110 miles an hour to a stop, it's not exactly easy. And unfortunately for Kalisto, he just didn't really have anywhere to go, and pretty significant damage. He's still down on pit road trying to get some of that damage fixed. He's a couple of laps down at this point, and unfortunate there, but he's got to try to get back out there and run some laps just in case we have any more issues.
Flag going to be back in the air. You're on board with Cozy outside of road 2 as you race back down to turn number 1. Single filing things out nice and easy down on the bottom of the racetrack. It's the 77 who's going to be pinched out 3 wide. The 17 and the 11 of Jones were stuck on the inside. Jones bails out of that one. So Guerrilla is going to be the one side by side. Now it ends up being, I think, a fight for 5th. Because Washington takes over the race lead. Even worse, it will be that fight for P5 and 6 because Spencer Green also able to make a move back up the inside and back in front of the 77. So Cozy, a little bit of a rough restart there. We saw how easily Farinar's tucked in line. Not the case for the 77. Still stuck up on the outside. The inside looks like it works, Brian, much better right off of a restart than it does at a green flag run. So if I'm Michael Guerrilla right now on that 17 Camaro, to get the spot, I want to get it now. And that's exactly what he does at a turn 2.
On fresh tires, there is enough grip where the bottom of the racetrack is where you want to be. It's after the tires wear out, after about 15 or 20 laps, where you're going to see these guys searching around for grip on the outside line. That's when it really becomes hard to get the power down on corner exit. You start slipping and sliding when you try to get back into the gas, and the easiest way to correct that is to try to take a straight shot off of the corner, which is why you'll see these guys run high and then try to arc that corner down to the bottom of the racetrack to make that run once the tires start to wear out. But right now they can get single file on the bottom of the racetrack. They can run their fastest laps right down there and be really aggressive at this point of the run. And the one thing I've really noticed is that David Washington seems to be on point here tonight. He started on the pole. He's led every lap to my knowledge so far. And he doesn't really seem like he's too concerned about the fact that the 88's breathing down his neck. He hasn't really missed a mark yet here tonight. Just continues to be smooth and steady. That's the Dave Washington that we remember. Last year he was so dominant in this series and led so many laps of different races and was able to win at so many different styles of racetracks. I believe he too went through a stretch where he won 3 or 4 in a row last year, much like we saw Dylan Jones and Andrew Freenars do this year. So we could be in the works of seeing that 98 car get back to his dominance. He's not in the playoffs, but he could certainly put a little bit of a damper on these guys by going out here and winning a few of these races.
Yeah, he wasn't able to qualify into the top 16 because wins do not lock drivers in. David Washington is a 2-time race winner this season with a win at Phoenix and Martinsville earlier on the year, but only made limited starts in the second segment of the season, which that's 10 races out of 20 in the regular season. I think he missed about 8 of them or so. Meaning that he only ran just about over half of those regular season races once they made the cut, but did start that final race at the segment at Indianapolis as a little bit of a way to warm up for this as he fights in segment number 3 and races with us here in this championship picture. And with Freenar stock at him, wouldn't be surprised the 88's hanging on to a little bit, not necessarily showing all his cards at the moment. There is a long way to go still from Richmond. A little bit deeper in the pack, looks like Brandon Bowie leapfrogs Jason Jacoby. That was for the 12th and 13th. Other than that, we single file things pretty quickly. Now a move comes from the 77 to Cozy, back to the inside of teammate Spencer Preet. There's fight on track. It's for 5th.
It's a pretty good battle going on right now. As you can see, the 77's on the bottom, Spencer Preet's on the top, and you guys continue to battle side by side. And now that we're getting to that point of the run, you can see the outside lines beginning to work again. Here comes Dylan Jones, and we're back under caution here at Richmond. Looks like there's a wreck in the back.
Top of the car is slow. It looks like Kyle Kamer's number 8 Chevrolet is the car that is sideways, and it is going to be a single car accident. You take a second look at the LSRTV replay on an all by himself at a P11. We talk about the lack of grip, Brian. The back end of the race car breaks down, and he notices it immediately. He steers right, counter steers, trying to hang on, and it just didn't stop, and by the time he slowed down to about 70 miles an hour, finally that car caught, and he spun himself back up the hill, unfortunately making contact with the left front into the outside wall.
Yeah, and that's just one of those things, like you said, he just was really fighting that car all the way through the corner and just never could get quite a grip on that car. But now we have everybody back to pit road, and this would be, if I was any of these drivers, I might consider taking 2 tires, especially if I'm one of those guys that's in the middle of the pack, maybe like a Daniel Eberhard or Brandon Bowie, who had some issues on the last one, which actually I think Bowie stayed out on the racetrack. Indeed, he did. So a big call right there for that 43 machine to get up there and get some track position. But everybody else is down here on pit road looking for service down here. Right now, it looks like everybody's doing at least right side tires. I haven't seen anybody go for 2 quite yet. Looks like everybody's going to go for 4 tires in fuel. Nobody wants to take that chance other than Bowie at this point. Comstock's already down and away. Can he beat Freenars and David Washington out? I don't believe he did, but I do believe Freenars is going to win the race off pit road. And indeed he will. And it looks like maybe Comstock beat Washington to the line as well.
And it's not a good exchange for the 98 machine. It does look like David Comstock is going to be credited with that position. So obviously the move by Bowie looks like he was just getting a bonus point, because he'll come right back down pit road now. He's gotten himself way off cycle, though, after the issues getting into the box the first time, and now he'll end up all the way at the back. So all of a sudden, Andrew Freenars is our race leader, and it's courtesy of a pass on a pit lane. Dave Comstock's going to be to his right-hand side, restarting second, and for as even as those cars looked, something like that could very easily be, you know, a race-changing decision. A pass for the race win could very well happen on pit road. We've seen it happen before this year.
Indeed we have, and that's why you've got to be good in every aspect of the race. You can't just be good on the racetrack. You've got to have flawless execution on pit road as well. Your pit crew has to step up to the occasion and give you what they need to give you every single step of the way, and right there, that's where Andrew Freenars was able to get it. And like you said, those 2 cars, him and David Washington, they were almost identical in speed. This could become an issue where if you can't beat him on the racetrack, you have to find a way to beat him on pit road. But you can't count that 42 of David Comstock out either. He looked really solid on that run. He was staying right with those guys. He was a couple of car lengths back, but maintaining a pretty good speed. And I was looking back through some of the stats, and he actually won this race back in 2015. So you can't count him out. He was actually very dominant in that race as well, leading the most laps and going to victory lane. So you can't count him out. You can't count any of these drivers out, because you just never know what's going to happen. But it's going to be a very exciting restart. I can't wait to see what's going to take place here as we get ready to go back green.
And we get set for the restart, just waiting on the 97 Lionel Callisto to take his wave by staying out and not coming down pit road. He will go from 4 laps down to 3 laps down. So it's the little things. You know, if you get involved in an accident early, your night's pretty much going to be a lot of staying out and getting wave bys. It's tough riders. We do see the lights going on top of the pace car, because he's got to stay out to get a lap back to get a wave by, but also I'm sure he wants to get down pit road to get some damage repaired whenever possible. So it's tough to do both. In fact, it's pretty impossible to.
Yeah, it's one of those things you have to decide which is more important. Do you want to take the time to get damage repaired, or do you want to try to stay as close to the lead lap as possible? And I think right now, if you're Lionel Callisto, that's got to be the priority. You don't want to spend as much time on pit road to get that car fixed where you're going to lose 5 or 6 laps. You want to try to stay within a reasonable distance where you can maybe get back on the lead lap and be able to get some positions here later in this race.
He will catch up to the back of the field. Pace cars get ahead off it in. Let's see what Andrew Freenars has got. Second race start on the night. At first one at the hands of the 88 machine as he sends it off into turn 1. Well clear. And now that's going to be for second position. Washington pushes up a little bit. He'll snatch second away from David Comstock. And again, through all of that, Freenars passing Washington on a pit road. The 98 lost 2 spots. He's got 1 back as he gets right back up in the second spot. Here comes Jones now to the inside. That fight for third is with Comstock.
Dylan Jones looks like a man on a mission right now as he is running that bottom of the racetrack and just sets sail, clears David Comstock, moving to third, and Comstock somehow is able to get ahead of Spencer Freaton's hold on to that 4th position. I thought he was going to lose that position as well, but he's able to get in line and he's able to hold on for the moment. And now he tries to get back to the 11 of Dylan Jones to try to go back after that 3rd position. But how about the 88? I did not see this coming. He's actually put a little bit of distance between himself and David Washington, up to almost a half a second already on this run. It looks really solid at this point. Maybe there wasn't such a close amount of talent or speed in these cars right now, because he looks like he's driving away from these guys.
Yeah, he's certainly been able to stretch it. And the one thing I was wondering, with the soft Farinas on the back of Washington, is we've got to fight for P5. Here comes Eberhard on the inside of Preet. Right on the racetrack. When I saw Farinas at the back of Washington, I was curious, is he really digging to stay there, or is he just conserving and only running the pace that he needs to stay right on that bumper and continue to apply the pressure? It looks like he was a lap in two because he looks strong up front. And in this battle for P5, Eberhard looks good. Preet a little bit out of control that time, but two decides it's best to just lift, and he will accept the slide down to P6 at board. Eberhard's your biggest mover. You thought Dylan Jones was hustling. The third place runner right now started at 15th position. He's up 12 spots. Wow. And he just best that by one. Daniel Eberhard started 18th. He runs 5th. That's up 13th. So 2 cars hot on the move.
And Eberhard looks like he wants that position from David Comstock, and he wants it now. He is all over the back bumper of that 42 machine, doing everything he can, trying to challenge for that position to move up into the 4th spot and get just a little bit closer to the race lead. Does a pretty good job getting where he wanted to this time. Can he drive up off the corner and make that move to the inside? Thought for a second he was going to challenge, and indeed he will. Here he goes to the bottom of the racetrack. Comstock moves up, gives him the bottom group, but doesn't give him a ton of room. He pinches him down, trying to hold him back as long as possible. But Eberhard now pulls up to even to the door as they head off into turn 1. Can he make the move down here? He's pinched it right down to the bottom of the racetrack, but Comstock fights back, carries a lot of speed through the middle of the corner. He's able to actually get ahead of Eberhard now as they work down into turn 3. Runs a little bit wider entry to the turns 3 and 4, and now tries to get that straight run up off of turn 4. But Eberhard continues to power on the inside line. Looks like he's got a really fast race car right now.
He looks really good, and he's been so smooth through all of this. He's got it. Makes the pass. Comstock looks for the crossover, and a little bit of a tricky spot to give somebody a shot, but I think Eberhard gave him a nice little kiss to the left rear quarter panel as he went on by, just to let the Donnie know, hey, this isn't done. You've still got about 123 laps to go. I'll just see you a little bit later on. But Eberhard looks great. I'm not going to really leave the lap time on that last lap because he was making a move, but curious what the Donnie could put down this time. Farinas with a 21.253 up front continues to maintain a half a second advantage over top of Dave Washington, but just for reference, this time by Eberhard with a 21.289. So he's pretty much running race leading speed right now. The only issue is he's in traffic, and Washington's running basically the same lap times. In fact, he was a little bit better the last lap. Jones is only about a half a tenth off, so Eberhard's quick, but eventually that lack of track position is going to hurt you right now. He's up to P4, that's good, but he's 2 seconds off the race leader. That's going to be tough to dig into.
It is, and it's even harder when you're only gaining a couple thousandths of a second each lap like he was right there. You're not going to make up that almost 2 second gap by being that close in speed to the leader. You've got to find a little bit more if you're going to get up there, but impressive drive nonetheless for both Eberhard and for Dylan Jones to come from the back of the field. They both took provisionals, and now they're up towards the front and both in a position to get the shot of the race win. Battle a little bit further back in the field. Brandon Bowie trying to make his way back up through the field. He is battling with Eric Stanford. That is a battle for 9th and 10th. Looks like the 43 machine is going to have the advantage down here in 3 and 4, and he will take that position away from Eric Stanford, but Stanford fights back. He got a pretty good run through the middle of the corner. I thought he was going to get back to the right rear quarter panel of Bowie, but he was not quite able to do it. So Bowie back up to the 9th position after having multiple issues down on pit road, and he continues his march back up through the field now. He's got a little bit of work to do to get to the next guy in line, about a second up to Daniel Falkingham, but it looks like that 43 car is looking pretty good at this point.
Yeah, and again, back to what we saw to the 43 machine. He was running second position, started this race, came down pit road, made a mistake, and that cost him a good amount of spots and went back into traffic. And I initially thought when he stayed out, sometimes somebody from the back stays out, we immediately think, all right, they're going for the bonus point Brian. I thought he was legitimately going to stay out, try to get some of that track position back, so I am confused by the move to stay out. You do get a bonus point for leaving the lap, but then to decide to come down to the pit lane, and you lost half the field on spots on your first mistake, and then your strategy the second time around puts you all the way to the back. So sure, he's back up to P9, but perplexing the decision for the 43. Now, you're the driver. I don't do a lot of it, and there's a reason why we're not behind the wheel and driving, and these guys are, but certainly seems like an interesting move, I guess, is the way I look at it for 43. He's got a fast car, I have no doubt in that. He's running pretty good lap times. A big issue to Michael Cozy Jr. in turn 1. He got really sideways. He'll lose 3 spots, one of which is to that 43 car.
And that was a big slide, very similar to what we saw out of Kyle Kamer, but he was actually able to hang on to it. Great job out of Michael Koji Jr. to not have bigger issues than he could have had right there. He does fall back behind Brandon Bowie, so he'll fall all the way back to the 9th position after that. Very impressive. But to your point about Brandon Bowie, I was sitting here and I think under that caution, what he was looking for was to see if anybody would come out and stay with him and not go to pit road. And when he figured out that he was the only driver staying out on those tires, he realized that it was not going to work to his favor. And I believe that's why he made the decision to go to pit road. I believe he had every intention of staying on the racetrack until he figured that out. And then he had to make the smart call, because being the only car on older tires, he was, a sitting duck. He wasn't going to last very long, and you put yourself in a really bad position, potentially to get caught up in an incident if somebody runs into you while they're trying to get around you on the next restart.
We'll continue to see how all of this plays out. Hopefully have the picture back to you in just a moment here, but Freitas is now starting to check out up at the front of the field, nearly a 1/10 of a second a lap every time around the racetrack. So what we'll do is we'll take a quick opportunity to step aside. When we come back, we'll see how the green flag run works out, and we'll get close to our midway race break. You're watching the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series at LSRTV, the iRacing eSports Network. Back to Richmond in a moment, and to Freitas, who's your race leader. And back live from the Richmond Raceway, closing in on the halfway point in tonight's race. Race number 2 with 3 on a round of 16 in the Full Throttle Racing Cup Series, powered by English Auto LLC playoffs. Happy that you're with us. LSRTV and the iRacing eSports Network. Andrew Freitas' gap has just about doubled in the, 5 laps that we were away. Brian, the gap now nearly 2 seconds on top of David Washington. It seems like everybody else kind of becomes human, and we're going to see a good fight for second in a moment, I think, shortly, because Jones has caught on, and so has Eberhardt. Those last two, some of the fastest we've seen on track tonight, both coming from outside of the top 15 in Q. They're in the back of Washington right now, but not much of a change for them, as the fact that, Freitas is way gone up front.
Brainard is trying to make a statement here. If he can get this win here tonight, it would be 4 in a row for that 88 machine, and he would be tying something we saw Dylan Jones do over the month of July when he won 4 races in a row. Won't be all of these races in 1 month, although he did win each race that we ran during the month of September, but it would be stretched from the end of August to the beginning of October for Andrew Freitas. And you've got to believe at this point, regardless of the fact that we're still a few rounds away, unless something catastrophic happens, this 88 car is going to be in the Final Four at Homestead. He's going to be the guy to beat when we get to Homestead. So now all of these other drivers are fighting, in my opinion, they're fighting for the other 3 spots and they have to find a way to find the speed that that 88 car has if they want to challenge him for the championship. You've got to look at him. I look at him like we do in the Monster Energy Cup Series with Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, and Martin Truex. He's that guy right now, and it is just incredible how competitive he is at every single track, and you have to find a way to beat him if you want to have any chance to win the championship.
Certainly the objective, it is a lot easier said than done. You talk about having, if you include tonight now, 22 races run on the year. If you haven't picked up something, you know, I don't think it's going to be something that comes in some sort of a late revelation, one of those, you know, the light bulb turns on moments. I think it's certainly going to be something that these drivers have to study over the course of a couple of races and slowly start to get a feel for. So we'll see if anybody else is going to be, you know, able to find something. But Linars is doing oh so good at the moment, and you know, somebody like a David Comstock is kind of balanced out. He restarted this race in second position, it fell to fifth, and just doesn't have a race car that's the same speed as you know, Washington, Jones, and Eberhard, who seem pretty even. Your race leader for Radar is actually dealing with a little bit of traffic, getting around the lapped car of the 48 machine of Tom Moreno. Moreno pulled out of the way. Radars thanked him for it, so that's not going to slow your race leader down at all. If this battle for second kicks off, you get a couple of cars side by side, might be a little bit more difficult for them to get by that lap traffic that's only about a half a straightaway out front.
Indeed it will, as these guys just continue to be breathing down the back bumper of David Washington. And it looks like Eberhard's starting to get a little bit impatient with the 11 of Dylan Jones. I've seen him get pretty close to the back bumper of that car a couple of times. I know these guys are teammates, but at some point you have to throw that teammate thing out the window and figure out what's best for yourself. And I believe you're starting to see that. Oh, as Dylan Jones has a big moment off turn 2. He got very sideways. Somehow he manages to keep that thing off the wall, but that does open the door and allows Eberhard to move up into that third position. Which basically does exactly what I was about to say. You've got to start thinking about yourself and do what's best for you. Well, he didn't have to do anything because of that issue right there for the 11 car, but now he's up to third. Can he get up there and challenge David Washington for second? That's going to be the big question. They are catching that little bit of lap traffic that you're mentioning right now. Washington is going to make his way cleanly past that number. I believe that was Tom Moreno that they just passed there, so in the number 48 car, and he's going to let all three of these guys go, so a pretty good move on his part to let these leaders go by. And now you can see the gap between these three cars. It looks like maybe David Washington figured something out because he's starting to pull away from these guys.
He's able to gap them just a little bit. So the Nani of Eberhard was actually falling off a bit from Washington and Jones. So impressed that he's been able to turn that around and get back up in this conversation. Obviously, Jones didn't help his case out much at all by hurting those tires. Certainly heat him up. Maybe if you lock up the brakes, you certainly lose a good amount of speed also by flat spotting them. So, you know, curious if that plays into any of that at all. But you know, he's right now behind the 90. I think Washington just not making mistakes, pretty critical on his behalf. And, you know, Fredar's still faster. I think it's just the rate of degradation that we've seen to this point is a lot more severe for seemingly everybody off the 88 machine. And, you know, that comes down to finesse, you know, just simply not abusing the equipment, but also it's not something as simple as he doesn't slam the right foot down, and all other drivers do. I'm sure his line, very sensitive of that. You take away around the racetrack that is both fast and non-abusive on the tires. So it's good to see what the number 88 machine is able to do, and we could find ourselves in a situation, Ryan, where, you know, when we look at it how it's played out now, a 2.7 second race lead is a good race lead for the 88 machine. It's a good amount of time. You're not really just going to make that up in a handful of laps. When you talk about green flag pit stops, you short pit somebody by 1, maybe 2 laps, that covers the spread. So when we get a little bit deeper into this run, and the next time by, halfway through in this race, when we get to that point, then maybe start to look back to see who's willing to play chess while everybody else plays checkers, and see if anybody does go that route.
Well, the fortunate thing for Andrew Freenars is because of the gap that he's got, he can afford to stay out there a lap or 2 longer than everybody else, because, number one, we know how fast he's going to be anyway, so if he gives up a little bit of that time or even gives up the race lead, it looks like he's going to be able to get it back pretty easily. But here the last couple of laps, David Washington's actually clicked off a couple of really good laps. He's managed to close that gap down by about 0.3 of a second, from almost 3 seconds down to just under 2.7 seconds. So looking like maybe that 98 starting to figure something out as far as maybe being able to try to run that 88 back in. And now it all goes away because we have a caution on the raceway once again. Looks like possibly the 21 car had some issues.
He's near it, but it was the 37 of Spencer Preet who lost it, not the first time that we've seen Preet get a little bit sideways. Certainly one of those drivers who's always pushing that race car to the very edge. The LSRTV replay will show this. He got loose at a 2, spun basically all the way down the back straightaway, and what a fantastic job by the one of Daniel Falkenham to somehow avoid that accident. Incredible driving.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And incredible that the 37 didn't hit anything either. He never stopped driving that car. He was out of control, but at the same time, he had control over that car and did a great job. When you have control like that during a spin, you allow the other drivers the opportunity to avoid you. It's when you don't have control of the car and your car is just flinging around that you have big issues. But everybody down on pit road now, once again, Andrew Freenar is the first one into his box. You got to have flawless execution down here. We saw this is where he got the race lead a little while back. Now, can he hang on to it with some clean pit stops? It looks like we're going to see 4 tires and fuel for everybody down here. Dylan Jones already down and the way back further off of pit road, but Andrew Freenars will easily win the race off. It looks like Dylan Jones may come out in second, followed by Dave Washington, then Daniel Eberhardt, and a slow pit stop for the 42 machine of David Contoy. He's going to lose, it looks like, 3 or 4 spots on pit road.
A tough break for there, but the good news is Freenar is your race leader. No issues. He is going to be able to come in first, come out first, and first time in a little bit, I think we've seen the top spot on the racetrack now shuffle up. Jones gets a big boost from all of that, and Dave Washington going to tuck into third. Scoring going to update this time by the line. We are halfway home tonight for the Richmond Raceway, so let's take this opportunity to take a look at our iRacing Midway Race Break, brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game with professionally organized racing from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, and more. At lap number 94, it is Andrew Freenar, scored as your race leader as he looks for a 4th consecutive win on a full throttle Monday night. Dylan Jones going to be to his right-hand side starting in second. David Washington, the pole sitter, ends up third through all of this. Daniel Eberhardt starts fourth, and it'll be Daniel Falkenham getting set for the restart in P5. A couple of cars losing positions early on. Brandon Bowie has lost a lot more than where he sits right now, so he's done a good job of climbing back up to P6. Dave Comstock is 7th with Michael Cozy Jr., Michael Guerrilla, and Ross Cato rounding out your top 10.
Currently shown in 11th is the 20 of Jason Jacoby, not having the night that we saw him have last week at Las Vegas, so he was so fast there. Dwayne Vincent caught up in an early wreck. He's currently being scored in the 12th position. Then we have Eric Stanford in 13th. Spencer Preet back to 14th after that slide down the backstretch. He's going to have a lot of work to do to get back up there. And then Kyle Kamer, the last car on the lead lap, currently scored in the 15th position. Everybody else is 1 or more laps down. Tom Morano currently sits in 16th. Lionel Callisto is 17th, and the rest of these drivers are already retired from the race. Looks like we have James Ross finishing in the 18th position. Brian Chambliss will run 19th, and rounding out this 20-car field, Brock Drury will finish in the 20th position here tonight. This has been a look at your iRacing Midway Race Break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, visit iRacing.com to sign up today. And Evan, this is a great place that you could come join us. If you're looking for a Monday night series, you want to jump in and be a part of the last little part of this season, you come in here on Monday nights. You can see yourself on TV here for a couple of hours every night.
Yeah, if you've got an A-Class license on the sim, perfect. Jump in. We'd be happy to have you at Charlotte next Monday. Of course, if you're maybe a little bit earlier in your sim racing career and you're just thinking about getting started, go to iRacing.com/membership, sign up. Maybe we'll see you a little bit later on in 2019. Pace car off and in, though. Freenar's back into control. Green flag going to fly as we now start to count down to the end. With 83 laps left to the board, the fight is for second. Washington, a little bit wishy-washy in the center of the quarter. But the 11 machine afraid, and there's the big slide. Washington hangs on. He'll go into the corner. He hits the 90, and somehow they make it through, pretty much avoiding what was certainly near catastrophe.
That was about to be a very interesting team meeting between those 3 drivers. If they would have crossed right, as Dylan Jones goes for a slide in the middle of the corner. Looks like he is still trying to recover as he loses a ton of positions right there. Falls back. Looks like he might fall back as far as 8th or 9th position when it's all said and done. Fighting with Michael Cozy Jr. on the outside. That would be a battle for 7th and 8th. And it looks like he's going to be able to hold on for the moment. But Cozy fights back on the inside, and And once you get those tires dirty, he was up out of the groove when that happened down in turns 3 and 4. He had some debris on the tires that made it very difficult to get through 1 and 2, and that's what's caused him to have this issue, I believe. Now he's got the tires cleaned off. It looks like he's able to get back up to speed and do what he needs to do, but he just gave up all that track position that he worked so hard for at the beginning of this thing.
He gave up a ton of that track position, and it's not something that's going to get any easier. I'm sorry to tell you.
And the 11 is wrecking on the backstretch. Big wreck on the backstretch. He continued to have issues down in 1 and 2, and he got spun around and unfortunately made some pretty heavy contact with the outside wall. I don't believe anybody made contact with him. Actually, Kyle Kamer did come in and hit him in the left rear, but that's going to bring out another caution here at the Richmond Raceway.
And he really got the least amount of contact from that 3-wide that we saw. He was way up on that third outside lane, but he could just never get the handle back on it, and kind of got straightened out by the outside wall, but that car just did not want to cooperate, and as it kind of bounced off of the outside wall a tad bit, just nicking it was the right front of Kyle Kamer's entry, and a tough break for him. It did do a pretty good amount of damage on the front of his Camaro ZL1. That car was damaged from earlier on also, so a little bit of insult to injury, but tough break for Dylan Jones. He's going to fall all the way down the scorey to pile on to the back. To see what happened at that exchange, but as we rejoin everybody, pit road open again. Brian, trend's going to stay the same. You get a yellow, you want pit stops. When you go down pit road for pit stop, you probably get 4 tires.
And this would be an opportunity for some of these guys. If they wanted to take 2, they could do it. It wasn't a very long run at all, but I do not believe anybody's going to take that chance. Looks like everybody is going for 4 tires. Daniel Eberhardt's already down and away from his service, and it looks like Andrew Freenars will once again easily win the race off pit road. A drag race between David Washington and Daniel Eberhardt for 2nd and 3rd. Looks like Washington will win that race off of pit road. Then Daniel Eberhardt comes out right behind him, followed by Daniel Falkingham. And then I believe the 43 of Brandon Bowie came out next, followed by Michael Koji Jr., then David Comstock. So a pretty interesting exchange of pit stops right there. I'm very surprised at this point, Evan, that none of these guys took the opportunity right here to go for 2 tires. That was only about a 4 or 5 lap green flag run. This would have been the perfect opportunity to do so. You wouldn't really have any time on the tires, on the left sides at least, and you could have gotten ahead of that 88 car and made him have to work for that race lead if he wanted it back.
Yeah, and we've seen a couple of those instances. I think that this one specifically may have been, the shortest of the bunch, but certainly we've had a couple of short runs, single digits, right around maybe 10 laps or so, runs that, listen, if I'm running back in 15th position, if I can just not lose that many positions for 15 laps, I'm going to be in a pretty good spot. Of course, your luck, you stay out, you don't get the tires, and then this thing goes green for 100 or something laps, and then you're in maybe a little bit more of a difficult position. But, definitely an opportunity that nobody's wanted to risk yet. Maybe that threat of going to green concerns them, or what we saw to Dylan Jones concerns them, Brian. Where if you got old tires, you heat them up, you spit them on the restart, you're just going to never be able to regain control, and it was a very long wreck, I'd say, for Jones. It was pretty much 3-4 laps coming where he could just not get into the gas for whatever reason.
Well, like I said, I really think that started with when he got shoved up into that 3rd groove. There's no grip up there, and you have all the dirty debris up there. It gets on your tires, and it really just causes an issue. And he just couldn't get the tires cleaned off enough to where he could get back into a rhythm. And that and the frustration of getting shoved out of line like that, you don't expect it. You certainly don't expect it out of your teammates. Not that anything that happened there was intentional, but it's just one of those things that all happens so quickly, and you're already frustrated because it's a short track. You get those short track tempers going, and it just gets into your head, and you start making some mental errors, and that could have been what happened right there for the 11 car as well. He just got inside of his own head, and it just started to have issues, and that's what led to him spinning. But lights are off on the pace car. We're about to go green once again here inside the last 80 laps of this thing, and now is when it's going to start getting very interesting. And I want to just point out, back to the spring race here, Andrew Freenars led 108 laps, but he was not the race winner. Brandon Bowie led the final 20 laps to go to victory lane. So just because Andrew Freenars has been the dominant car all night tonight does not necessarily mean he's going to be the guy coming home with the checkered flag. He's got to finish this thing off if he wants to get the win.
And we'll see if he's going to be able to do so. You never know what happens with late race restarts at short tracks. We're not quite at that point yet, but with 75 laps to go, we go back into green flag conditions. and second place continues to be one of the good battles off of the restart. This time at on 8, not that good of a jump. Here comes Eberhard. He's got the lead down the back straightaway. As he got the spot, though, there's going to be a quick caution. Problems on the back straightaway. Dylan Jones in the 11 is involved in this one. He had been running up front, and he gets collected deep in that one. Looks like the incident started with the 17 machine of Michael Guerrilla. He is the one who got turned around. Looks like the 37 to Spencer Preet going to be the one that causes that one.
Yeah, Spencer Preet just got sideways coming off the corner, and that's these guys are getting more aggressive because we're getting closer to the end of the race. He was trying to get as hard back into the gas as he could. He got into the gas too much, slid, got into the right rear of Michael Guerrilla, and that just led to a huge wreck. And now Dylan Jones' night just went from bad to worse because of that incident. And that's what happens. You get yourself behind the 8-ball a little bit, and unfortunately you just get caught up in somebody else's mess, and he's got some more damage to work on now if he wants to have any chance to get back into this thing.
And there's another one of your really quick cautions. Funny enough, nobody comes down to the pit lane from the top 10 this time. A couple of cars trickle in towards the rear. It is mainly the heavily damaged cars. Dwayne Vincent really gets torn up and all of that. I already mentioned Dylan Jones. Of course, Jason Jacoby got a piece. Michael Guerrilla. That is a late race, short track restart right there. And all of these drivers are now in a position that we saw to Lionel Callisto early on, who, as we rejoin the action live now, Callisto, I believe, may have an opportunity. Brian, I haven't seen if he has already gotten his wave by yet. He might just be rejoining the lead lap this time through. If he is, it'd be extremely impressive. He may still be 1 lap down, but for starting 4 laps down way early on in this race, the 97's did a very good job of toughing this one out.
Well, and this is what he needed to do because he was involved in that first incident, had heavy damage to the front end of that car. And we talked about it. He's making his first start in the playoffs here tonight. There's a handful of other drivers that have not made a start tonight or in the playoffs yet, but could show up next week at Charlotte. And if he has a bad points night, they could potentially get right up into the mix to take that final spot away from him into the round of 12. So he needs to try to get every position that he can. And now that he has done that, look at the cars that he has passed. He's passed the 26 of Brock Drury, Brian Chambliss, James Ross, and now he's got an opportunity because of a couple of these wrecks that he might be able to pick up a few more spots before it's all said and done. So those are precious points for that number 97 car that could potentially help him out. And we saw yesterday just how important points are. We had a 3-way tie in the Monster Energy Cup Series for the final transfer spot into the round of 12. And it came down to who had the best average finish, or the best finish in that round of 16. And we saw a 7-time champion not make it into the next round. So it's extremely important to get every position that you can at this point, just in case something happens.
Every little point may add up, and very easy to get upset. I mean, it's a short track race, and these drivers invest a lot of time into practicing and so forth. And listen, it's very easy to get upset and just park it for the night. And you know, short-sightedly, not that big of a deal. My night's done. Who cares? But if Lionel Callisto parked it when he was involved in his incident earlier, and he just called it at that point, I think he might even be behind Brock Drury. He dropped it early on. If not, he's running 19th. Instead, he stays out. He's running in 15th position. Who knows how critical this 4 points could be.
And you just never know what's going to happen, so you've got to do everything you can just to be safe. But looks like the lights are off on the pace car once again. They are doubled up one more time. They're going to take an opportunity here to go after it again, and we're getting to that point of the race where you're going to see the aggression really go up for these drivers. And now that Daniel Eberhardt's on the outside of the front row, if he can get a decent restart, he might be able to stay with that 88 car, potentially do something here to try to take that race lead away. That's going to be your best opportunity. Get a good restart, stay with him, try to pinch him down off turn 2.
Going to get it on board shot with the Donnie Daniel Eberhardt. You're right on the outside of the front row. Green flag back in the air. Another good jump for Radars, but not good for the Donnie machine. He'll end up almost 3 wide. Brandon Bowie to go up the middle of the RaceToTheBids.com machine with his teammate Comstock just behind him. Wanted to make the move, backed out of it the last second. They'll go for the crossover. Not going to happen. Dave Washington, 1 block and now 2 in the center of the corner to keep him behind him. The Donnie machine almost into the back of the Donnie, and he's going to get sent. Big slide for Eberhard, and what a save. They're not going to be able to hang on behind him.
And that was a big wreck, and unfortunately for Brandon Bowie, he hit the Eberhard machine, kicked him sideways, and then in the process he slowed down. Comstock had nowhere to go, ran into the back of the 43, and then Ross Cato came in and gave some pretty heavy contact to the 43 machine of Brandon Bowie, basically just to finish him off right there. You see the replay on your screen now, and just a huge hit for that 43 machine. Unfortunate, just one of those chain reaction things. It started with the contact between him and Eberhardt. Comstock had nowhere to go, ran into the back of him, and then things just were on from there. So unfortunate for all of these drivers, but we're back under caution here once again, and you can just see just how much harder these guys are getting, are starting to drive as we get closer to the end of this thing.
Certainly starting to close down to the end, and here's something for a split strategy. David Washington to pits from second. We mentioned how the drivers did not come down last time, Brian. If you ignore, the yellow that just happened, and look at the amount of green flag laps that we've run since the last time your race leaders were on pit road, we've seen drivers pit in less time than that. And for some reason, David Washington's the only one to bite. A majority of race leaders stay out. It's going to cost him a ton of time, at least in regards to, running up front with the fastest of those top 5 cars or so.
Yeah, and this is an opportunity for some of these guys to maybe get off sequence here. Now, if we get another short green flag run, they can stay out and put the 88 behind them. And now that we're getting closer to the end of this thing, if you can make him lose some of that track position, he might not be able to get it back. That's what happened back in the May race. He dominated this thing, but we had a series of cautions at the end. Brandon Bowie ended up getting off sequence. I believe he took 2 tires, if I remember correctly, to get the race lead. And Andrew Freenars just was not able to take the race lead back from him. And Brandon Bowie led the final 20 laps of the race to go on to win. I believe that was his first win of the season as well, so a big victory for him. But he's going to have his work cut out for him if he's going to sweep the Richmond races here this year, because he's got that damage to that 43 machine, and now he's all the way back in that 14th spot right now as well. So not looking like a good situation for him, but just one of those things. But how about Daniel Falkingham up into that second position? He's had a pretty solid night. We haven't really talked about him all night, but he's been right around the 5th position all night long, and he just continues to get closer and closer to the front. This is a driver that is still looking for his first win of the season, and he has got a lot of speed in that car, and I would not be surprised if he could find a way to challenge that 88 car, if he could go up there and maybe steal that win tonight.
Arguably, if we're not talking about shit, that's probably a good thing when you're talking about a race like Richmond. Short track, a lot of accidents. If you stay out of those, don't see anything wrong with it. The driver, the number 1 to Bashani, was the 3rd lowest finishing driver from the playoffs last week at Las Vegas. Of course, again, that'll put him overall, I believe, 9th in the championship. And again, the simple objective is to make the top 12, be able to advance into the next round. That would include Dover, Talladega, and Kansas. So the 1 to Bashani is pretty good. He doesn't need a win to advance, but you mentioned that he's looking for his first Braun. He certainly wants it.
Well, I mean, and it comes down to just that. I mean, he hasn't won yet in this series, and much like we saw with Jimmy Johnson yesterday, he didn't need to win that race yesterday. He could have come home in second place and easily advanced into the next round, but he wanted to win that race so badly, and he drove that car in there hoping that it was going to stick. Unfortunately, he locked the brakes up, spun it around, and we know what happened from there. But it's just one of those things. You get this close to the front, you taste that blood, basically, and you're just like, oh, I have an opportunity. I have to take it. And that's what we might see here out of this one car. He knows that he doesn't necessarily need to win this race to move on to the next round, but a win would make you feel so good, especially when you haven't necessarily had the season that you've wanted. Had fast cars, but haven't had the success due to other people having issues or due to just some issues that you've had throughout the season. So you just get to that point where you just want to go after it, and I think it's going to be pretty exciting here to see what happens. Same thing with that 77 of Michael Cozy Jr., another driver that's been very fast all year, but hasn't necessarily had the success that he's looking for. So a couple of these guys up here with an opportunity to change their season in a big way here tonight.
Let's see how this one closes out. Still a long way to go. Look how quick the 88 of Freenars goes. Pace car just getting below the yellow lines. The 88 is gone, so he'll rock it out in front. But the big thing here is Daniel Falkingham made up a lot of those spots, Brian, because he was restarting on the inside, and the guys up top just didn't get going well. He wanted to shoot a restart on the outside in front row. He got a good restart. Now he's got sole possession of P2. Michael Cozy Jr. third, and somehow, despite the rough night, Spencer Preet right there, P4, still looks like he's got a good amount of speed.
We had a little bit of 3 wide action going on in the middle of this pack right now with David Comstock and Jason Jacoby were going at it with Eric Stanford, but Stanford got way out of the line down in turn 1, went almost up to the wall, and he gives up a ton of track position. Now it looks like he's heading to pit road, so not sure if he's got an issue with that 19 car, but these guys are being very aggressive, trying to get some of that track position back. Of course, a handful of these guys stayed out, so your front runners that have been up front. Oh, as Daniel Fogelman has a big issue off of turn 2. Talked about how close he was to having a big night. Well, he had some issues right there. The same thing we've seen out of a couple of these guys. He just went down into the corner, got sideways, somehow managed to save it, but now he's around in 3 and 4, and the issues that he had just could not be corrected. Actually, he made some contact with the 90 car of Daniel Eberhardt, and that's what's going to lead to him going around and puts us back under caution.
And that's how quickly it could all fall apart. The replay is going to show you the number 1 machine. It all starts again when he got sideways at a turn 2, and it was a great save, but I mean, he was doing like half speed down the back straightaways, just trying to get going. He might have been okay, but he got split, and that car just didn't turn into the corner. He pushes up into the 90. That's another great save by Daniel Eberhardt. He's had a couple of those tonight. And 1 machine spins out, nobody else involved. The 1 machine locks it up, and he avoids damage. It was a long road for him to get from 11th on the grid to that 2nd position on track, and unfortunately enough for him, I don't know if he's going to be able to get back up there in the just under 60 laps that remain from Richmond. He'll certainly take it down to the pit lane to get repairs, and while we pace again, we'll take a quick opportunity to take a caution flag of our own. Step aside. We'll be right back when we return. David Washington, now your race leader. You're watching the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series on your home for sim racing. And back live from Richmond Raceway, LSRTV's coverage of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series, powered by English Auto LLC, continuing this evening. Happy that you're with us on the iRacing eSports Network. Evan Pasoko, Brian Backlund upstairs with our producer Brett Wheeler bringing us to you this evening. Brian, 2nd race of the playoffs, and what started as a pretty tame race for Richmond standards has kind of flipped pretty quickly since we got a caution flag around the halfway point about 30 or so laps ago. A couple of quick yellows in a row has hurt some of our top runners, shuffled up the running order. The one consistent thing is, well, David Washington's back to the race lead.
Yeah, but Andrew Freenars, and we talked about this a little while ago, these guys have gotten off sequence, and now you see a bunch of drivers that stayed out ahead of him. Andrew Freenars is going to go from the race lead all the way back to the 6th position now. Is David Washington, David Comstock, Ross Cato, Michael Guerrilla, and Brandon Bowie all elected to stay on the racetrack under this round of caution, and they are now way ahead of him. And this is what happened to Andrew Freenars back in the spring race. He dominated the early stages of this thing, but we got to this point of the race, we started having all these cautions, some guys got off sequence, he never could rebound to get the track position back. I'm afraid he might be in a similar situation right now, as we're down to just over 50 laps left in this thing, and it's going to be very difficult to get by all of these drivers and get back to the race lead.
We'll see what the ensuing of 54 laps have in store. If it's anything like the last 30, we are far from done. There's another good restart. This job at the hands at the 98 machine. David Washington, he's way gone. 4 or 5 car lengths as he gets off it into the corner. And we once again see the battle for the number 2 spot. Here's Ross Cato's opportunity. First real shot up front. The number 12 Toyota's gotten all night. And while Dave Comstock's going to be able to defend outside, and The 42 does tuck back in P2. Drill Machine's got a good opportunity here in a podium position. Look behind him. Brandon Bowie with damage. Tries to throw a block on Andrew Faridarz, who is fast and coming up hot on the inside. He'll take over fourth. Watch out for that 88 machine storming back through the field.
And he is trying to do so as he's up to that fourth position. He looks for the third position now as he's trying to chase down Ross Cato for that position. Dives down into the corner, being extremely aggressive. He forces the issue right there to move up into that third position. He will easily take control of that spot. Ross Cato was not able to fight back, so Andrew Freenard not wanting to do the same thing he did back in the spring race. He is doing everything he can to try to make up that ground and get back up there, up to the third position now. But he's got some work to do if he's going to get back to David Washington and David Comstock now, as they are about a second ahead of him is David Washington. About a half a second as we got a car sliding on the backstretch. Michael Cozy Jr. almost goes around, somehow hangs on to it. I don't know how he did it, but he hangs on to it, but we'll lose all of his track position as a result.
I'm impressed that the 43 didn't get turned because Bowie was on the outside, and the back end of that 77 came around, and he was drifting down the hill just enough that back end didn't whip into the 43, and somehow there is no caution from that. We stay green, and Brendan Bowie does end up losing a couple more spots. Jason Jacoby gets on by. Kyle Kamer gets on by. You can definitely tell the 43 struggling with the damage that he's got on board, but still willing to run this one out.
Indeed, as we get down to it, just under 50 laps to go now, David Comstock and David Washington are out front, but battle is on for second position as here comes Andrew Freenars all over the back bumper of David Comstock. Looks low as they go off into turn one, trying to take that position. He slides in there, but Comstock throws the block, somehow able to hold on, but Andrew Freenars all over him at this point, trying to do everything he can to get back up there and challenge for the spot. Now Andrew Freenars tries to go to the outside line, try to carry that run off the corner. I believe he's going to do it. Comstock has to give him the outside line as they go down the front stretch. Can Freenars make it work? He throws the car down into turn one, ran a little wide. I think he got loose. It's going to allow Comstock to hold on to second for the moment. Now here comes Eberhardt looking for a good position.
The Honda machine looks to the inside, so side by side they'll go for third in all of this as Eberhardt tries to take it away for the 88. I'm not sure how successful he's going to be. Not a lot of speed that time before. He got cleared on the straightaway, but I think a smart move by Faridarz to not try to throw it to the inside. And how about that move as Eberhardt puts it in the gas off of two. There was contact, and all of a sudden a battle that looked like it was just about done is full-fledged, going at it, still nose to nose, and David Comstock, I'm sure, wants to get away, but he can't do it. There's still right on his bumper.
Yeah, Comstock wants to focus on trying to run down David Washington, but he's too busy looking in his mirror, worried about what's going on behind him, and it's making it very difficult for him as Eberhardt finally looks like he's able to get by the 88 machine of Andrew Freenars to move into third, but Freenars looks like he's going to fight back, goes to the inside, and he's going to try the crossover move to see if he can't get that position back. Andrew Freenars on the bottom of the racetrack. Daniel Eberhardt trying to fight now. They pinch each other coming off the corner, doing everything they can. And I can tell you one thing, David Washington is loving what he's seeing as he just continues to drive away. His gap's up to 1.3 seconds over Comstock, and these guys go after it. Now Eberhardt tries to get to the outside of David Comstock. Could we go three wide down here in turn one? I thought Andrew Freenars was going to take
the 90!
Oh, and 90! Eberhardt goes sideways. Wow, big slide.
Big save also the third time. Daniel Eberhardt has defied all physics and held on to a race car that was destined for the graveyard, and it is going to cost him spots once more, so you can consider it another error, but he'll drop back to LP5. The battle still on for second. This time it is Andrew Faridarz on the outside of David Comstock, and the 42 again wasn't able to get away from those two behind him when it was a battle for third, so I think you got to give Faridarz the upper hand. He gets back into the gas first, and he charges back to P2. Faridarz now got a clear shot to your race leader, Dave Washington. The gap sits at 1.5 seconds, and this time by 40 laps to go.
And we saw how quick Andrew Faridarz was on the long green flag run that we had earlier on. He was able to put almost a 3-second gap over David Washington. And now he has slightly fresher tires, so you've got to believe that he's going to be at a pretty big advantage here if this thing stays green for a long enough period of time. You can see we have a side-by-side battle going on a little bit further back, though. Brandon Bowie, Daniel Falkingham going at it for 7th and 8th position. And it looks like Falkingham will take that position as he slides ahead of the 43 machine to move up into 7th. So he's trying to rebound from his incident just a handful of laps ago, making his way back up towards the top 5 here. Now he's focusing on that 20 car addition to Jacoby to see if he can't take away that 6th position as well.
Just trying to get that little bit extra fight for it, and we'll see if Jacoby's going to be able to do so. He came out of the gate hot and made his debut in this Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series at Vegas last week, and qualified up front, ran up front before unfortunately not getting the result that he would have liked. It's been a little bit more of a struggle for the driver of the 24 this evening, working with some damage on the J. Jacoby entry, so he'll try to work through all of that, but guys like Bowie and other drivers who just passed him up there in that fight for P6 and 7, they're in the same boat, so certainly he's running around cars that are dealing with issues of their own, and it seems like right after getting yellows within 10-15 laps, and it figures I'm jinxing it by bringing it up, but we kind of got stuck in that rut. Now that we've single-filed everybody out, there's a good chance to get a good amount of green flag laps in here. The last 2 times around, Andrew Farinar scored 2nd, been the fastest car on track, and for a 3rd straight lap he is, and it's not even close. He is a 10th faster every single time around in comparison to your race leader David Washington. So with 35 to go on the board, he's got time. It's a question of execution.
It's a question of execution, and it's also one thing that we talk about a lot in racing. It's one thing to catch somebody, it's another thing to be able to pass them. Andrew Freenarch has the faster car. It's clear as day. He's, like you mentioned, another 10th off of the time right there, that he was quicker than the 98 car. But once he gets there, he has to be able to get by him. And you know David Washington's not going to just lay over and let him pass with ease. He's going to make him work for that car. And you look back for David Washington, yes, he's won 2 races in this season, but the last time he won in 2018 here on Monday night was all the way back in March at Martinsville. So he wants to get back to victory lane. It's been a long dry spell for that 98 team. He wants to go for it. We have a battle for 3rd position going on right now as Eberhardt has recovered from his big slide. He's to the inside of that 42 machine of David Comstock, trying to go after him side by side down into turn 1. One more time. Here they go.
Stick with the theme that Honda Machine won't stay dead. He keeps coming after the 42. He's risen and again, and he's not going to be able to get that position, but he'll certainly keep the pressure on him. I think you can toss Eberhardt there in that same boat as somebody like a Spencer Preview. They drive the race car 100% every single time around, and sometimes they push it to 110 and try to get a little bit too much, but you're never going to see those drivers just kind of putting around the racetrack, not trying to get a fast lap every time they step out there. He'll look to the inside, and he's been awfully close to tagging to Comstock a few times. It is a short track. If you feel like moving somebody, the option is certainly there, although I'd suggest maybe lining it up with that Gary Mercer truck and logo on the back bumper, push him out of the way a little bit. When you get to the left rear, things don't normally end well.
Not very well at all. It's a very risky move to hit on the left rear. Like you said, you want to try to line that bumper up straight if you want to make that move to try to do the bump and run. Otherwise, you're most likely going to cause an incident. But at this point of the run, it looks like Eberhardt's just trying to find everything he can. But that gap for 1st and 2nd, it's down to just over a half a second. Andrew Freenarch continues to just chip away lap after lap after lap. He's about a 10th quicker every single lap. Battle continues to rage on for that 3rd position, though, as Eberhardt just will not go away, and Comstock is not willing to give that position up. He's doing everything he can, fighting for it. Runs higher down into 1 and 2, going to try to get that run off the corner, see if he can't hold on. He's done it so far. Can he do it once again? They're even as they work down the backstretch, and Eberhardt has the inside line down here in 3 and 4. Looks like he might have the advantage this time, but Comstock fires back on the outside. He's not willing to give up just yet.
And they're just ridiculously close to each other in the corners, practically leaning on one another, seemingly so far without consequence. And finally on the inside, yes sir, Daniel Eberhardt clears David Comstock and ends the battle momentarily for 3rd and 4th position. And just as we say that, we turn our eyes to the top of the scoring pylon. Faridars, another 10th off, and he is now closed in to within 1 car length. The race leader, David Washington. If the 98 wants to get back into victory lane, he's going to need to find a little bit extra. Faridars has flown up and caught up to him. Now it's a question of when does he make the move. He's got a ton of time to do it, but there's no rush. And we did see 49ers be very patient earlier on in this race, running around and following Washington. But if you're at the 98 machine, you know, Brian, maybe if you run consistent laps, you don't give him a big opportunity. He won't force it yet, but you give him a small mistake, you need to leave that inside open and you're done.
Indeed you are, but Andrew Freenar, as you mentioned how he was patient earlier in the race, that was when he had over 100 laps left in this thing. We're down inside 25 laps to go. You can't afford to be patient at this point. If you get the opportunity, you have to take it. And now that he's gotten this close, if he can make a move, he's got to go for it. He can't afford to wait if he wants to have any opportunity, because you just never know when that opportunity may run out. We could have a series of cautions. You want to have the track position before the caution comes out, assuming it does. You don't want to wait until it happens and then rely on your pit crew to make your track position back. I know he was able to have that happen earlier in the race, but you just don't want to rely on that being how you get it. So he's got to be very aggressive right here as he continues to look around. Now I see that 88 car starting to search around for different grooves. He's moving up the racetrack just a hair, trying to get a better angle off the corner to see if he can't make that run to get closer to the 98. Now it looks like he's going to try to make a move to the inside, but Washington throws the block. Doesn't allow him to make that move, but here comes Andrew Freenar. She got a great run off of turn 2, and now he's able to look to the inside. Can he get there? No, not quite. They continue to go after it here, but David Washington continues to hold on for the moment.
Continues to hang on as he closes in. 22 laps now left to go from Richmond. I don't think these two need to be concerned about anybody else catching up. Daniel Eberhardt's kind of playing at his feet. Looks like he'll be able to hang on to third. It's not still close, but Eberhardt has pulled a couple of car lengths, but they are 3 seconds back, so it is very much a two-horse race to decide this one tonight from Henrico County, Virginia. Washington in the 98 machine started first, has led a ton of laps, so has the 88 for that matter, but it's a question maybe of, well, how much time have you spent in this car this season? When Washington ran for the entirety of the opening segment, he was good. He was one of the best, and that's no soccer to us. Won 2 races earlier on this season, but it has been all about 49ers lately. We've seen some very good runs this year. A 4-race win streak by Dylan Jones in segment 2 that spanned Chicago, Daytona, Kentucky, and New Hampshire as the longest race win streak that we've seen all year. He went on to win what was a total of 5 of 6 races. Well, 49ers has won 4 of the last 5, and he wants a 4th in a row, and there it is, as the 98 machine can't get down into the corner, and with lap traffic ahead to the inside and through goes Andrew 49ers. Washington wants it back, though. He'll drive to the inside, but it's not gonna stick, and with 18 laps to go, 49ers back to the point.
I think David Washington locked the brakes up going off into turn 1. He got very, very tight going into the corner, which makes me believe that he had some issues there, and unfortunately that could be what cost him his opportunity of getting his first win since March back at Martinsville, unless he can find a way to pick up a little bit of speed. But he's on a little bit older tires than the 88 machine, and we know just how fast Andrew Freenar has been on the long run all night long, so it's going to be very difficult for David Washington to do anything with him right now. If he's got anything left, he has to pick it up and show it right here, because he is running out of time now. Just coming to, I believe, 16 laps to go left in this thing, so definitely beginning to run out of his opportunities. At this point, I believe David Washington would almost prefer to have a caution so he can get on equal tires with that 88 car and really be able to challenge him for that race lead and potentially maybe challenge for the race win.
Well, you can hope for it. You know, you just you need the cars to fall your way, and certainly Washington's picked it up. He doesn't have a chance. I think that 98 is giving it 100% right now because, you know, 49 is still quicker, but the 98 was getting caught by a significant margin and was able to hold it off some time. But it goes to the point we made when 49ers initially made that move at a second ride, when the gap was at that point, I think, 1.5 seconds between the two, and that is, if you're Washington, you got a chance. The 88's got a better car at the moment, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a chance to win this race. He did caution a mistake, and that might be it. It looks like the 98 took himself out of this one.
Yeah, I mean, if Andrew Freenars were to make a mistake right here, you need to stay as close as possible so that you can try to capitalize on that mistake. We've seen these guys have a lot of issues getting into turn 1, getting loose and getting sideways, so if something like that were to happen to Andrew Freenars and David Washington's close enough to capitalize, he could potentially get back into this thing. So it's very important that he tries to stay as close as he can to the back bumper of that 88 car in case something like that were to happen. And now he's either looking for that or he's looking for a caution so that he can get on equal tires and just try to do something. But these guys have just separated themselves unbelievably from the rest of the field. 3.5 seconds back to Daniel Eberhardt. That's in third position. Everybody else is a little bit further back. David Comstock's right there on the back bumper of Eberhardt. But then you have to look back another almost 2 seconds to find Spencer Preet and Daniel Falkingham, who are back almost 6 seconds from the race leader. So it's incredible just how quick these two cars are here tonight and just how much they have been able to gap themselves from everybody else.
It is impressive, and, you know, speed out of all those other cars. It's not like you're talking about slackers. We have seen, I think, a majority of the cars who run right now 10th through 5th, so those back 5 of the top 10 or so were the top 5 cars at Vegas, of course, with Freenars the exception, but all those drivers had good nights, and it's been a night of attrition. That's something that we haven't seen a whole lot, as we are inside of 10 laps to go now from Richmond Raceway, Brian. The fact that when we talk about these 20 or so fields of cars, that we get these races that have more green flag racing, that you know, more or less has the majority of the cars be able to wrap it up. And you got somebody like a Tom Morano who sits a lap down. Lionel Callisto was never able to get all the way back. This long run's really hurt him because his speed is so far off. He's back to 4 laps down. But I mean, there's only 13 cars left running. 7 have not been able to make it to the end. That's a lot more than our average has been for quite some time. And listen, it's a short track race in the playoffs at night. I guess you should kind of predict that something like that's going to happen.
Well, and look at Lionel Callisto and the amount of positions he was able to make up as a result of that. That could be huge for him going into Charlotte next week because, like you mentioned, we had 7 guys that have not been able to make it to the finish of this race. Well, had he fallen out of this thing at the beginning, he would have finished 20th. Right now, he's currently scored in 13th, and should we have anything happen over these next couple of laps, he could potentially pick up another couple of spots. Now, if we get inside 4 laps to go and nothing happens, this is where he's going to finish, 13th. But still, those 7 points, those 7 positions on the racetrack, they could be extremely critical to him making it to the next round. And if we talk about this next week, say one of the other drivers that hasn't been here yet shows up, if they get within 7 points of him and he's able to hold on, well, we're going to look to this moment right here and say this is what moved you on to the next round, and it's going to be an incredible moment for that number 97 machine. So kudos to them for sticking it out and making sure they got every point that they could just in case, and that could potentially be the difference between them making it to the round of 12 and then watching these other guys move on.
Going to be a big 2 laps here for Andrew Freenars, of course. He could mess up on his own at any point between now and the end of the race, but he wants to get by the next time. It'll be 4 laps left to go, and that is the ever-famous point of no return. No restarts, no overtime, nothing of such in the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series and on the iRacing service. So as he comes by this time, it would mean if we get a yellow, as long as it's not him, it'll be a slow pace to the end of this race as Andrew Freenars does take lap number 177, just trying to close this one out. Dave Washington right there in the number 2 position, 3.2 seconds off like an anchor. Has come out of the back of the number 98 car. Eberhardt might come up a little bit shy, but certainly pressing him for P2.
Yeah, David Washington had a couple of issues a handful of laps ago coming off turn 4. I saw it. He got very sideways off the corner and had to really check up, and it cost him a ton of time as a result of it. That brought him back to the 90 car of Daniel Eberhardt. I don't know if Eberhardt's going to be able to get to him as we get to the 2 to go mark, but he's certainly going to make a valiant effort to try to get there and challenge for that position. But pretty spread out at this point. Just got to get to the end of this thing. Andrew Freenars, though, what an incredible drive he has been on, doing something that we saw Dylan Jones do over the summer stretch. If he can just complete this next lap and a half, he's going to win 4 races in a row. He's coming to the white flag right now.
And it would tie the exact statistics we talked about with what we saw to Dylan Jones. It's white flag in the air, 1 lap to go from Richmond. Maybe no doubt the 2 best drivers that we've seen thus far this season. We saw Jones go 4 in a row and 5 for 6 earlier this year. And Freenars is going to be to do just the same thing here. It'll be the 5th of the last 6, but most importantly, the 4th in a row, and a record 7th on the season. Final time, Andrew Freenars, race winner from a Richmond Raceway, tied all the way back to Pocono, winning there. And then, of course, Dylan Jones slotted in and snagged one. But the last 4 weeks in a row, Darlington, Indianapolis, Las Vegas, and Richmond, 4 in a row for a series-high 7th on the year.
Absolutely incredible out of this 88 machine, and it's just amazing what they have been able to do, and they just continue to find ways to do it. Tonight was an absolutely dominant performance, and he just continues to put it on every single week, and just it's going to be tough to beat him. I'm telling you right now, you almost have to guarantee that this guy is going to be in the Final Four at Homestead. He's most likely going to be the guy you're going to have to beat, barring something catastrophic. So it's going to be very interesting to see what these guys are able to do and see if they can do something with him here.
And this goes back to the way that this playoff format works. It's something that we had seen if you had been following with us here on the iRacing eSports Network with the eNASCAR Ignite Series, Brian. You know, a situation where, Garrett Lowe is so good, wins so many races, 15 wins in a regular season, the first 2 of the playoffs, no doubt the best car overall. You get to that last race, you get a top 5 out of it, and it's not enough to be the championship. Freitas could get double-digit wins if he continues this up. He could be, by far and large, separating himself by Jones for the best car thus far this year. But if you don't execute at Homestead, none of that matters. So, take it for what it's worth. A great run. 2nd in a row for him on the playoffs, and 4th, as we mentioned, in a row overall. But I think importantly for him, he doesn't allow anybody else to punch their way in.
Absolutely, and it makes it that much harder for these guys moving forward. But you're right. I mean, he's been so dominant, but something could happen at Homestead, or he could just have an off night, and just like that, he could end up not being the champion. So that's what makes things very interesting. You have 4 drivers battling it out for a championship. They're all even. It's going to come down to whoever finishes the highest, and it's going to be a very exciting race nonetheless to see what happens there. Cannot wait to see who we have in the Final Four and who's able to go up there and actually win that championship. It's going to be a very exciting stretch, but we got to get through 6 more races before we can even worry about that. So we have got a long ways to go before we're going to have to think about that.
We'll get driver reaction in a moment as we take one final opportunity to step aside. When we come back, the post-race show from Richmond. You're watching the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series on the iRacing eSports Network.
The most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. Detailed laser scan tracks, fully dynamic real world cars, and over 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $100,000 in annual prizes. This is the original eSport racing game. This is iRacing.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of LSRTV, and it may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Live Sim Racing LLC and iRacing.com Motorsport Simulations. LSRTV would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. And back live from the Richmond Raceway for the LSRTV post-race show following tonight the 22nd race of the 2018 campaign. Happy that you're with us on LSRTV and the iRacing eSports Network. Let's go trackside now with the driver of the number 88 machine. And again, we've mentioned it once, we'll mention it, I'm sure, many more times, but it has been such an impressive run for Andrew Friedars, and it continues tonight from Richmond as he gets his 4th in a row and 5th of the last 6. We're trackside with him now, Andrew. Congratulations. They certainly tested you there, including a late race run that you had to come through the field in order to close this one out, but the result's the same as you head to victory lane.
Yeah, how about that? Man, that was a lot of fun. It was kind of differing strategies there. You were wondering if 2 laps would be enough, and I really think Dave had a quicker car than me. It just that 2 laps was just that little bit I needed to get by him. We were pretty even. It was a matter of who was out front, but I wasn't going to pass him on the bottom. I had to start running different lines and just testing it. I finally got a big run off of 4 and dove it in there, and I think the lap car there might have, I think Dave thought he was going to run kind of in the middle where he was going to. He tried to back the corner up, and I wasn't really able to pull away from him until he just, I don't know what happened. I looked back and he was gone. So I think we got really lucky tonight. I think we had a fast car, top 3, but definitely we'll take it. Everything aligned, and 4 in a row, that's crazy.
He just pushed it over, leading half of the laps tonight, led 96 of tonight's 180. When we came into the playoffs, we certainly know that you and Dylan were going to be 2 drivers to look at. When the playoffs started, you had 5 wins, he had 5 wins, and that came off of, between the 2 of you, you guys winning 8 of the 10 races in the second segment. So there's no doubt that, that's going to be a point that we're going to watch. Wasn't the greatest of evenings this night around for him, as he wasn't able to make it to the end. But, with guys like David Back, Eberhard, Comstock, a lot of drivers really picking it up, you seem to also be running at the best you have all year. You've got 7 out of his 5. You feel like maybe you're making a case to no longer make it the big 2 and kind of stick your neck out there and put yourself in front?
I'd like to say that, but I don't like to get too big-headed. I'm fortunate to have enough time to practice every week and get out there. And, I know Dylan, he doesn't practice as much as me, and he's still right there. So, when he wants to, he can turn it on. I definitely like to say, maybe we had a little advantage, but I think he had a fast car tonight. I think he was even quicker than me. He just got caught up in a wreck. So as much as I like to say that, I don't think so. I think we still need to put in more practice than we have. And, we're definitely making a case for it, but I would say no.
We look forward to, to what's going to be coming up the end of this round. Doesn't matter a whole lot for you. You're already locked in. You take another win. So I guess that prevents anybody else from punching their ticket through, but it certainly looks like the drivers who have made the start is going to pretty much mark up the top 12 for you. So what are you able to get out of tonight? What were you going to be able to get out of next week? Because the advantage you had is you got some bonus points coming into this round of 16, courtesy of those wins on the regular season. That will not carry over to the round of 12. It's going to be a completely even playing field, and of course, with 4 drivers out of 12 getting cut, it gets a little bit more serious as we work our way through. So what can you enjoy maybe out of your last week of being able to run around and have fun staying loose before, again, it gets real tense by the time we get to Dover?
Well, I think kind of just like tonight, everybody on my team, we were kind of laughing, having a good time, good racing. When we get to the next round, everybody tightens up. You can't give as much, especially, I know the low car count really caused that, but it was good racing out there. I got to say, a few cautions, but we were able to end on a long green flag run. But just trying to stay sharp. We come out, win these first 2 weeks. Next week, I don't know if we're racing the Roval or the Oval there, but I like the Roval. It's a fun track. I like the Oval too. So whatever we do, just gonna go out and have fun, kind of relax, and then everything tightens up when we go into round of 12.
Yeah, we'll see what it's going to be for next week. We haven't gotten the new Roval yet, so we'll see if we do run the existing one or if it ends up on the current Oval. You can keep an eye on the LSRTV Twitter, the RSR Twitter at RealSimRacing for all of those tuned in to make sure you know decisions made here in the next day or two. Either way, I'm sure that the AE8 machine is going to be in a very good position, Andrew. You win a lot, so we borrow your time a lot. We appreciate that. But before we let you go, sponsors and shout-outs, all that good stuff. Who makes it happen?
Yeah, a big shout out to Dave Washington. He's really good at this track, and he was showing me something before the race that kind of helped me out. And like I said, I think if he had fresher tires, he would have won. I think even Daniel without that spin and Dylan, I think they probably would have been right there. I got to thank all those guys: Kyle Kammer, Eric Stamford, James Ross, everybody on Aegis. And you guys for broadcasting, I always love watching it back. Evan, all you do for this league, I know it's tough. All the drivers for running, you know, I enjoy running this league every week, and they're all respectful, and it's a fun race. And big shout out to my dad. I think he's coming home soon. I hope you're feeling well. I hope this cheers you up a little bit.
It's, wouldn't be much to do on a Monday night without you guys, so we're certainly seeing you here weekly, Andrew. And again, congratulations on the win. We'll let you take off, but we'll catch you next week at a Monday. If we don't get a chance to talk, though, good luck at around at 12. We'll certainly see you then.
Thanks so much, and thanks to all the fans as well for watching. Really do appreciate the support.
Good night tonight on the iRacing eSports Network. That is your race winner from Richmond. It is Andrew Faridar's 4 in a row. Maybe trying to shut out the opening round of these 2018 playoffs. A driver that, he was in it around a lot tonight was Daniel Eberhardt. It's going to be a third place for the driver who's your biggest mover. Started way at the back and finishes on the podium. Trackside with the 90 machine is Brian.
Yeah, I'm down here with the number 90 machine of Daniel Eberhardt. Dan, you started all the way back in 18th. You had a very interesting night. We've seen you come up through the field a couple of different times, a couple of big slides for you, and somehow you managed to recover from all of that to get a third place finish. Pretty incredible night for you here tonight.
Yeah, it was. Richmond is a very different track for me. I struggle here a lot, and I felt very good all night long. I felt like I had something for Dave and Andrew, and just got caught up in something that really was nobody else's doing. It was just something that, a racing deal with Bowie hitting me, and then the one of Fockingham getting loose and then coming up into me. I had no problem with them guys. I think Bowie just wasn't ready for me to break, and Fockingham was just trying to save the car. And I was lucky to save it, and they got the worst end of the deal. I feel bad for them guys, but tonight I felt good, man. It was fun. It was, there was points in there in the race where I felt like I had the fastest car, and then sometimes on one run it would feel kind of awful. It was just like, man, I just could not hit my marks for a full run, it felt like.
Yeah, very interesting night nonetheless. Now, looking at the points, I can tell you that you're currently being scored in the second position in this round of the playoffs. So, pretty good start to the playoffs for you so far. What do you have to do differently at this point to be able to challenge Andrew Freenor? As we talk about his success this season, he's got 7 wins on the season, the last 4 in a row. Obviously, he looks like the odds-on favorite going closer or later into the playoffs. You got to believe he's going to be in the Final Four at Homestead. If you're going to get to Homestead and be a part of that Final Four, how are you going to be able to challenge Andrew Freenor to take that championship away from him?
It's time to show my stuff, Brian. It's put up or shut up now. It's the big deal. It's what I've been wanting to make it to is the Final Four for the past 3 years in RSR. And it's time to put up or shut up. And I was wrecking all last segment in the regular season. And now I've come into this segment and come in second and third. And I felt like I was catching Dave at the end. It's time to just do what you got to do to be right there with Andrew. And I feel like I'm getting there. These are kind of his tracks, Vegas and Richmond, but I think we're going on to Charlotte next week, and I think that's really where I'll shine at.
And speaking of Charlotte, we're actually doing the Charlotte Roval next week. It's not going to be the updated version that we saw in real life yesterday, but it's going to be an interesting race nonetheless. How do you feel about running that Roval for the first time? It's going to be a different beast for everybody, and it's going to be an elimination race just like it was for everybody in the Monster Energy Cup Series yesterday. It's going to be a pretty wild race, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think turn 1's going to be treacherous, but luckily we don't have a wall to pull up Brad Keselowski or Kyle Larson. But yeah, that track's kind of difficult to drive with a Cup car. I've done it a couple times. It's pretty fun. Keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, the heartburn turn, like you said, we won't have that big wall there to run into at this point, but definitely going to be an interesting race nonetheless. Before we let you go, Dan, sponsors, shout-outs, who makes it happen for you on the 90 car?
I got to thank everybody at Aegis Motorsports, Andrew, Dave, Dylan, Eric Stanford, just everybody who makes it possible out there, Kamer. And then I got to thank the good Lord above for letting me do this each and every day. And then I got to thank my girlfriend that sits at home watching this, cheering me on. It's pretty awesome to be up here duking it out with Andrew and Dave again.
Absolutely. Congrats on your third place finish here tonight, Dan. We'll see you next week at the Charlotte Roval.
Thanks, Brian.
Daniel Eberhardt with a solid run here tonight. Our biggest mover starts all the way back in the 18th position, climbs all the way up to third position. What an incredible drive for that number 90 machine here tonight, Evan Pasoko. And After we get through this race, I was just looking at the points, and unofficially, the top 10 in points are all locked into the next round of the playoffs. They have gotten enough points to where they cannot fall outside of the top 12. The only people that are at risk of possibly falling back would be Dwayne Vincent and Lionel Kalisto. Dwayne Vincent, he basically just needs to start the race to guarantee himself a spot into it. So really, it just comes down to what Lionel Kalisto is able to do should one of those other 4 drivers show up next week at the Charlotte Roval.
Yeah, Kalisto really fought for a lot, and if we see any of the 4 drivers who have not started, so Casto, Ewing, Silver, or Wood start, and Kalisto has another bad night, fighting for the 13th place he got tonight could be huge, but certainly it looks like everybody else above him pretty much safe. They're fighting for wins, but again, you don't get those 3 bonus points as we start the round of 12 like they did into the round of 16, kind of the way that we used to see this chase format work on the real-life side of things before the implementation of playoff points and all of that. None of that here on the Monday nights in the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series, but we look forward to that race at Charlotte, Brian. And again, the new updated version of the Charlotte Roval probably going to be on the sim December at the soonest. iRacing scanned it, and then they changed it again, so the folks had to go back and rescan the entire thing. We all know that the team over at iRacing isn't going to cut any corners, so they went back into the entire thing over again. So we're basically on the version 1 of the Roval before they really modified it and cleaned it up a little bit. So it's going to be a nitty-gritty race that we'll see next Monday. It's certainly a lot of fun, though, and I think maybe the fact that these drivers aren't going to be very, very tense about trying to transfer that, I think they're going to be able to have some fun with it also.
Absolutely. The fact that most of these drivers are going to be locked in means they can just go out there, have a lot of fun, and just learn the track, really, more than anything. I mean, it's something that not very many of us drivers have had the opportunity to do. It was new to everybody over the last weekend in the real world trying to figure out how to do the Charlotte Roval, because it's just one of those things we've never done before. So it's going to be interesting, to say the least, and fortunately, as Daniel Eberhardt mentioned, we're not going to have that heartburn turn wall to run into if you have any issues breaking down into turn 1. So you're not going to have that to worry about. But it's going to be an exciting race. I always love going to the road courses because you just never know what's going to happen. And this would be an opportunity for somebody different to maybe get up there and try to steal a win from Andrew Freenars and keep him from going 5 wins in a row here on Monday night. So going to be exciting nonetheless. We'll just have to wait and see what happens.
And we hope that you join us with that when it comes around. We've got a ton of live sim racing action here on LSRTV. That's going to be over on the LSRTV channel this week. We will see you on Wednesday as the eSpeed Contender Series Bomb Trap Fabrication Playoffs continue. That one gets underway at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And then Thursday, it's the debut of the Sesra Series. Thursdays at 9 o'clock as well, I should say, also on the LSRTV channel. That one, a brand new series that's going to run all the way through February. So we certainly hope that you join us for those 2. But of course, we'll be back for tons more action. You can find our full schedule on our website at www.livesimracing.com. And the best way to stay up to date with us is by following us on social media at facebook.com/LSRTV official. You can also follow us on Twitter at LSRTV, and more ways to stay connected. Also encourage you to, if you haven't already, subscribe right here on the iRacing eSports Network and over on our LSR TV page. And you can keep up to date with RSR by following RSR on Twitter at RealSimRacing for more information. On behalf of our entire team at LiveSimRacing LLC, for the folks who makes it behind the scenes every single night in and night out, and of course, for your broadcast team tonight. For myself, Evan Pasoko, for Brian Backlund, and for our producer, Brett Wheeler, we want to thank you for joining in and congratulate your race winner tonight, Andrew Freenars, 4 in a row. He'll go to sweep the round of 16 next Monday night. That one comes on October the 8th from the Charlotte Roval. That race in every race of the Real Sim Racing Cup Series going to be found right here on LSR TV and the iRacing eSports Network. Until next time, good night from Richmond. The following is a special presentation of iRacing on LSR TV, your home for sim racing.